Hello YouTube, thanks for stopping by my channel. In this video I want to talk about a subject that I've talked about in other videos about the current state of affairs in regards to men not marrying. We have men participating less in things like college. They're going into the trades. Men aren't marrying. I've talked about in the past about the family court system and how it's rigged against men, and how today a man has a lot to lose if he gets married with no-fault divorce and losing half of his assets, having to then pay alimonies and child supports and all this and that, and how oftentimes it's a raw deal for man today. And so you have a lot of men who are opting out and dropping out of society. You have more men who are pulling out of the workforce. They're not going above and beyond like they used to. They're just doing the bare basics to make a living, to support themselves, and that is all. And just in doing the minimum in this current society. You hear that men are staying home, they're playing the video games, and you'll hear acronyms called MGTOW, which is men going their own way. So you'll hear that. You'll hear things called the passport bros, where you have men who are encouraging one another to get their passports, and they're going abroad and living in other countries for many reasons, for economic reasons, for the dating reasons. They're finding women that are more respectful to them, where they're not having to deal with the feminism and all of that in some of these countries. They're becoming digital nomads, and they're working abroad and leaving the United States with all of the wokeness and feminism and all the rest behind. And so I know I've touched on it because it's something that I too have experienced it. And what sparked this video was I came across another book and read it. Men on Strike. Check this out. Boy, did this speak to me. Helen Smith PhD. Why Men Are Boycotting Marriage, Fatherhood, and the American Dream, and Why It Matters. Interestingly, she wrote this book over 11 years ago. Over 11 years ago, this book was written. Here, I thought it was just something new. I thought, hey, look at this. Men on Strike. And I'm going through it, and I'm thinking, hold up a second. This was written 11 years ago. Copyright 2013. And I'm thinking to myself, and here we are, 2024, and what's changed? If anything, I think it's gotten worse. Men on Strike. Yeah, you got that right. And so I wanted to bring this book back into the light, and just to bring focus to it. And I didn't realize how many books have been written on this subject. And this is one of them. And I read it, and boy, does it speak a lot of things. That's what's going on. And here, I'll just go a little bit through it here. This was her audience for this book, just to give you a flavor of it. Maybe it'll speak to some people out there. My actual audience is the man who knows that something in today's 21st century is amiss. He can't put his finger on it exactly, but feels deeply that modern society has turned its back on the average male. All around you, you hear the question, where have all the good men gone? But you know instinctively that it's the wrong question. The right one is, why have all the good men gone on strike? This book will tell you why, and tell you and society how to fix it. Because if we don't, our society will never be the same. Our sons, brothers, fathers, uncles, and husbands will live in a world where they will not know due process, where a man can be jailed for no other reason than that a woman pointed a finger at him, or because he raised his voice to her, or where he can be placed into involuntary servitude to pay for 18 years for a child that is not his. And she writes, oops, too late. This is already happening in the United States of America. Yes, it is, and I've heard of it and know of it happening. Yep. Finding out later that the child's not even his. In those talk show, day shows with Maury Povich, you are not the father. Men are sensing the backlash against them and are consciously and unconsciously going on strike. They are dropping out of college, out of the workforce, out of marriage and fatherhood at alarming rates. So much so that a number of books have been written about this phenomenon in recent years that look at the man-child of today and summarize that he and his arrested development have taken a vacation from responsibility because he can, or because he can now get sex on demand. Isn't that interesting? 10 years ago, she wrote that. And boy, can I relate as a man what's been happening. And like I said, I've talked about it in other videos. Let's see, chapter 1, the marriage strike, why men don't marry. Society has stacked the deck against men in modern marriage, and the guys know it. Ultimately, society is asking men to do something that is going against their own interests. Their lives as single men are fulfilling, happy, and, if not respected, at least envied by their married brethren. Yep. Many married men admire me. Jim, I admire you. And if I may add, I am happy on my own. What I'm saying is, I don't need somebody to make me happy or rely on somebody for my happiness. And I think that's something that because I've lived alone and been single, I have learned to be responsible for my own happiness. So if I ever got with somebody, I wouldn't need her for my happiness. I'm already happy. So that's a good thing in my view. Life as a married man is often difficult, with few perks and little in the way of respect or rights. The discrepancy between the life of the freer single man and the life of the less respected, less free life of the married man is at the heart of why so many men have gone on strike. This discrepancy between the perks of single life and the punishment of married life for men has become wider in modern times, given the unequal legal terms, cultural empowerment for married women, but not men, and the lack of reproductive rights that men face in comparison to their female counterparts. Look at that. Look at that. And men are waking up and seeing it. And they're seeing it with their own eyes. And they're observing it. And then there are why men don't marry from the man's perspective. And you have what the men are saying. And it's stuff that I've heard throughout the years. You know, as many of you know, I did 23 years in the Army, and boy, did the men speak, and I listened to them. And I heard it. My body, my choice. Your body, no choice. This was interesting. She quotes Warren Farrell, who wrote a book called The Myth of Male Power. And this is what he said. Although it's his body, a man has no choice when it comes to deciding whether or not to be a dad. He states, in the 1990s, if a woman and man make love, and she says she is using birth control but is not, she has the right to raise the child without his knowing he even has a child, and then to sue him for retroactive child support even 10 to 20 years later, depending on the state. This forces him to take a job with more pay and more stress, and therefore early death. He has the option of being a slave, work for another without pay or choice, or being a criminal. Roe v. Wade gave women the vote over their bodies. Men still don't have the vote over theirs, whether in love or in war. That spoke to me. Isn't that interesting? When we go off to war as a military man, sometimes I didn't have a choice. Get in there, soldier. This spoke to me, this book, man. I'm not going to do a whole book review, just giving you a flavor of it. The college strike, where the boys aren't. Wasn't that a 1950s or 60s song? Where the boys are. Where the boys aren't now, honey. So yes, they're not going to these colleges anymore that are geared to women mostly. Let's see here. Since 1998, the number of females in post-baccalaureate programs have exceeded the number of males. Between 2000 and 2010, the number of male full-time baccalaureate students increased by 38%, compared with 62% increase in the number of females. Among part-time post-baccalaureate students, the number of males increased by 17%, and the number of females increased by 26%. See that? So you've got this stuff going on in these colleges. And men are staying out of there. Let's see here. The college strike didn't happen overnight, she says. It started years ago when the war against boys began after the feminist era. Initially, feminism was presented as being about equal rights between the sexes. Now it is often about revenge and special privileges for women and girls. Christina Hoff Sommers is a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., and she has keen insight into the plight of American boyhood. In her book, The War Against Boys, Sommers explained in detail the efforts of feminists and their sycophants to turn the educational system into one that favors girls at the expense of boys. Boys and their masculine traits and needs are often frowned upon in U.S. schools. I think I talked about that in another video, about the feminization of our boys. Sure did. Isn't that interesting? See it? I've sensed this and picked up on this. And she continues, let's see. Boys and their masculine traits and needs are often frowned upon in U.S. schools, and boys are now seen as defective girls in need of major overhaul. And then we wonder why boys are staying out of there. Can't blame them. Heck, I've seen that. And then how many men want to be teachers? You talk about school teachers. I even considered it. You don't have very men as school teachers. And when I was leaving the military, there was a program called Troops to Teachers program. Troops to Teachers program, and I considered that. And they would help you get the additional requirements to get your teaching certificate and to meet teacher shortages in schools that in need, you know. And I looked at that, but I talked to enough people who said, Jim, no, you don't want to be a teacher. And the things that could go on, you're being a male and the false accusations and all this and that and the third and the political scene and not being able to teach things, and it's an absolute mess right now. And said, Jim, no. So I backed out of it. I listened, and I said, nope, I'm not going to go be a teacher. And I thought that would be a nice way to continue to serve again and maybe be involved in the junior ROTC program or something like that. And I said no. After talking to enough people, and I think that is so sad. But that's the world we live in now. And what a crying shame. And getting worse by the day. And then she talked about here. So widespread is the problem of men being viewed as predators that a man can't even sit on an airplane anymore without potentially being called out as a pervert. A businessman is suing British Airways over a policy that bans male passengers from sitting next to children they don't know, even if the child's parents are on the same flight. I just wonder if that's still a thing now. I don't know that after all these years this book was written, but isn't that interesting? You see, in this chapter she wrote about why it matters. And here was something that I thought was interesting too, that spoke to me. And I know some of you might remember it. I remember when this happened on January 13th, 2012. It was the Italian cruise ship, the Costa Concordia. I remember that being on the news. And it partially sank off the coast of Tuscany with 4,252 people on board. 30 people died in that. And it was a every man for himself kind of thing. It said that crew members were not much help. Then the captain, as passengers reported that many of them left passengers to fend for themselves. Rich Lowry at National Review compared the crash of the Costa Concordia to the Titanic and how men responded in each. Let's see. Here's somebody wrote, every man for himself is a phrase associated with the deadly Costa Concordia disaster, but not as a last-minute expedient. It appears to have been the natural order of things. Listen to this. In the words of one newspaper account, an Australian mother and her young daughter have described being pushed aside by historical men as they tried to board lifeboats. If the men of the Titanic had lived to read such a thing, they would have recoiled in shame. The Titanic's crew surely would have thought the hysterics deserved to be shot on sight and would have volunteered to perform the service. Women and children were given priority in theory, but not necessarily in practice, the Australian mother said of the scene. And let's see here. And then the author here, she writes that Lowry seems to be blaming men for what happened on the Concordia by saying that the guys aboard made sure that chivalry is good and dead. And he misses the point. The guy's behavior is a culmination that has been years in the making. Our society, the media, the government, women, white knights have regulated and demanded that any incentives men have for acting like men to be taken away and decried masculinity as evil. And how often have we heard even of recent toxic masculinity going on right now as we speak? Even in the political scene, you're hearing it in bits and pieces of it. Now they are seeing the result. Men have been listening to what society has been saying about them for more than 40 years. They are perverts, wimps, cowards, assholes, jerks, good for nothing, bumbling deadbeats, and expendable. Men got the message. Now they are acting accordingly. As you sow, so shall you reap. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? A book written over 11 years ago. As you sow, so shall you reap. And I've often heard this. You reap what you sow, more than you sow, later than you sow. Shall I repeat that? You reap what you sow, more than you sow, later than you sow. I heard that many years ago. And here we are in 2024. The Concordia is just a microcosm of what is happening in our greater society. Men are opting out, bailing out, and going on strike in response to the attack on their gender. A society can't spend more than 40 years tearing down almost half of the population and expect them to respond with, "Give me another forever." Boy. And she continues, and she did write in here what can be done about it. So she does give some suggestions for us. Fight for better laws, including those on paternity and forced fatherhood. Fight back in education, things like that. She gives, and she even gives tips. Let's see here. Another tip: reclaim male space. I guess some places are outlawing male spaces or all male clubs for men to go and to be amongst each other. In some places, they're getting rid of that kind of thing. Unbelievable. She even gives tips for women. And so for you ladies out here, this is what she gives for tips for women on how to help. Stop your natural tendency to complain to him so much. Yes, the culture tells you to do it, and the media exacerbates female victimhood and misandric behavior, but stop it. That's her speaking, not me. That's the author, Helen Smith, PhD. She also says, do not go out and complain about him to others. This is a killer for your relationship. And if he finds out you are hanging out with your girlfriends and dissing him, his feelings of trust will break down. And if your girlfriends constantly complain about men, tell them that you don't appreciate it. Listen to that. And the last one, listen without judgment to what your guy has to say. People are always saying that men don't speak up, but they often don't because of the negative reaction they get, especially from women, or they'll use it against you. That's one thing I learned. Don't say too much to a woman because she can use it against you. Men are terrified of anger, judgmental women. They're terrified of angry, judgmental women. So no matter how weird or disturbing you think what your husband or boyfriend says, listen and don't disrupt. Don't interrupt with how he should feel. Just let him talk. At the same time, don't try to get him to talk about your relationship constantly. This is a relationship killer. I think those are great, great tips. And then she continues on. Where do we go from here? And in conclusion, anyway, Down and Dirty Quick Book Review. Men on Strike by Helen Smith PhD. Why Men Are Boycotting Marriage, Fatherhood, and the American Dream, and Why It Matters. A book written 11 years ago, folks. And oh, how relevant it is today. Is it going to get any better? Or are men going to continue to adjust and maneuver in this current society as a natural reaction to what is happening? Young men are seeing it. They're listening. They're observing it. And even one guy told me, Jim, go down to the family court and go sit and go listen to what's going on down there. That'll change your mind on ever getting married, Jim. Jim, you think that you've missed out? Let me tell you something, brother. You ain't missing anything. He said, Jim, I know there's things that you feel like you've missed out on in life. But he said, brother, be glad there are some things in life you have missed out on. Boy. And when you hear this, and something that I think there was a time where we didn't have all this. We didn't have this gender war. And the way men are feeling and being treated, and this feminism, and it's this, something is off here. And I think women are being taught and sold a bill of goods too. And they're being taught to be this strong and independent and you don't need a man kind of deal. And a lot of those women now are regretting it. And now they're older, they're not married, they don't have any children. But boy, are they crushed it in the business, they crushed it in their job. But then they go home and they're all alone. And they believed all that. And how they longed and wished they would have found a man, got married, and had a family of their own. And now it's too late for them. So they're hurting. Men are hurting in all of this. And what's so sad is that you do have women that are being advocates for men. And of course, you have men also who can speak, I think, more, much better coming from a male. But women are also they're learning and getting spooled up on what's going on, and also sounding the alarm as women. So you have women in men's courts, which I think is good. And so we're getting, the information is getting out there. But I've run into situations where I brought this up and talked to women, and they laugh in my face. And they just snicker, and they laugh, and they look at it as a good thing and as a victory. And it's in their language and the way that they conduct themselves, as in, tough, buddy. This is the way it is. You don't like it? Tough. And they laugh right in your face. And it's just sad. And we live in a time now where women don't need us as men. They really don't. There was a time where women didn't have many choices, so they had to get married and depended on a man for safety and security, and to be taken care of and provided for and all of that. Whereas now, they don't. A lot of women don't need us. And so they can go and get the bag themselves. And they've got their house, they got their this and that. Which, that's fine. That's fine and dandy and good for you. For being successful and getting out there and educating yourself and all of that. But we're paying a price for it. We're paying a price for it. And how are we going to fix this? Is this going to get any better? I mean, she offered some suggestions. They were just general, but I don't. What I read in there, I don't see it happening. I don't see a lot of these laws changing. I see the same thing going on. Just talk to anybody in these colleges; they'll tell you what's going on in there. Talk to anybody in the public school system. Talk to guys who have been falsely accused with things, and they take the woman's side, and yet he's in prison and jail and paying for things that, that's not true. Children are not his, and just go right on down the line. And the raw deal that's going on. And this is why men are going their own way. This is why men are dropping out. This is why men are going on strike. This is why men aren't marrying. This is why a lot of guys are keeping to themselves, doing their own thing, playing the video games, getting by with the bare basics. They have their basic simple job, their studio apartment. They make just enough money. Why go above and beyond the call of duty when you live in a society that a lot of people quite simply hate you, and in a system that is rigged against you, and that you have the good intentions to go and do these things that society says that you should do as a man, and man up and get married and have a family and do all this and that and the third, and then you get punished for it. Or things that are absolutely out of that man's control. He's doing everything right, working hard, providing and protecting his family, but because for some reason the wife says, I'm not happy, and takes him to the family court system, and now he's losing half of his stuff and everything else and being wrecked financially and all the rest, and the mental toll that it takes. And who are the ones with the most suicide rates? It's the men. And how many, I ask myself, how many of those men take their lives because of something that happened in the family? How many of them were wrecked in family court? How many of the men that you see out on the streets that are homeless now? I've talked to a lot of those homeless men. And you know what's a common theme amongst those men? They were once married, had a home, and went through a divorce. And it messed their mind up, and they've never been the same since. I've seen that. It's an issue. It's a problem. So we got to fix this. This is something's going to have to happen, or this could very well be the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome. High divorce rates, mass immigration. We're losing our identity in America, and on it can go. So this could very well be the fall, and our fall and our collapse as a society, because I think we are out of order in the nature of things. And it's so sad that, there was a time where we had those roles, and marriage was looked at as a good thing. And a man who got married, he considered himself the luckiest man in the world. Now, if I hear a man getting married, I feel sorry for him. Any man that gets married today, I'm like, whoa. I hope he knows what he's getting himself into. I hope he knows the laws. I hope he knows what rights that he's gaining, and I hope he knows what rights he's given up. I hope he knows. Men are waking up and wising up. Men are comparing notes. And it's a shame that family in marriage is looked at as a negative light. Or if you have kids, a lot of men don't even get to see their own kids, because the majority of the time in a divorce, the kids go to the mother. So he doesn't even get to see his kids, or used against him, or they're used as pawns in that divorce. And it's just a sad shame. what's going on and what we're seeing in our society today. And it just seems to be, to me, getting worse by the day and not getting any better. And but I just wanted to talk about that and bring it back in light, a book that was written 11 years ago, and just keep it on the front burner, man, and keep the discussion going and keep it out there. And then to the men, we have each other. That's all we really have, because society doesn't really care about us. And I think even sometimes women really don't care. And in some ways, I hate to say this, but women really don't like us as men. I don't think so. I think down deep, especially when they're able to provide for themselves, I think men oftentimes are just used. They have to be a sperm donor to have children and to get resources from, but then once their usefulness is done, get away from me, buddy, kind of deal. It seems like that seems to be the case from my observation. And men, we're in it for love. Women, they're in marriage, they're in it for business. Men are in love, men are in love, women are in business. It's all business for them. It really is. And right now, a lot of men are saying, I'm not participating in all of this. I'm out. Or they're going abroad and trying to go elsewhere to where perhaps they're more apt to be celebrated, looked at with value, and not just simply tolerated as we are here in America oftentimes. Sad time in which we live. And so I would have to put myself as one of these men here now in the United States. I would never get married in the United States. I'm even pretty much done with dating unless somebody should come out of nowhere. But to go through the effort and time and energy and money, energy, attention, and time, and go through the whole dating rigmarole in the United States today, absolutely not. I mean, if something should come my way that's okay, fine. But I am not going out of my way and supporting this current system and what we have now. And a lot of men are doing that very same thing. They're happy working their job. They've got their hobbies. They're learning new things. They've got their buddies, their friends, their family. But to have long-term relationships, they're not. Or if they were in a relationship before, say they were married, they're now divorced, they're never going back to that marriage, institution of marriage, ever again. No more for me, Jim. Nope, I was married for 32 years and never again will I ever do that. And I got my dog, I've got my hobbies. I'm living my life in peace right now. I've got a girlfriend that I see on the side, and that's good enough for me, Jim. So they're doing things like that. And so that's where we are, folks. That's where we are. So that is all. I won't continue to ramble. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Stay safe out there.